It's so nice to have everybody here. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being here. I really know that signing up for something like this during divorce, when you're in the middle of all of it, can be a lot. So before we jump in, I just want to say thank you for taking this time to invest in yourself for this hour. And as I mentioned, you're welcome to leave your camera off. You're welcome to turn it on if you prefer. We are recording, as you saw. There'll be a replay. But I hope that this will feel as comfortable and low-key for you as possible. So before we start, maybe you can silence notifications if you're up for it, and really give yourself the gift of this hour. There's nothing for you to do but be present. And I really realize that you probably don't get an hour to yourself very often. So I promise to do my best to make the time worth it for you. As we move into this next part, I want to acknowledge something that I see all the time, which is amazing, smart, capable people who feel bad about themselves because they're not handling divorce the way they're used to handling tough problems. What I hope I can offer you instead during this time is maybe just a shift in the order of operations. There is nothing wrong with you for feeling unsettled right now. Divorce truly has a way of shaking the most capable, grounded, clear-head people who normally make really good decisions, trust themselves, and are confident as they're walking through the world. So today is about helping you feel a little steadier. Because when you're steadier, everything else gets easier to navigate. We're going to talk about why so many decisions feel heavier than they probably should right now, or at least that you feel like they should, why your brain keeps replaying conversations, and why just pushing through, which probably works for you in other situations, may be backfiring during divorce. And I'll also share some practical ways to steady yourself before you decide or communicate or react, especially when kids are involved. And as I mentioned, I hope you saw in the registration, thank you for showing up live. I have this PDF on 5 ways to de-escalate when you're triggered. It's very practical, usable things that you can get off this call and use right away to hopefully reduce conflict and stabilize yourself a bit. So stick around till the end, and we'll give you that link to download it. I like to start with my story because I bet it sounds like many of yours. I married my college sweetheart, and while it wasn't perfect, of course, I thought we were really solid. We had our twins, and in so many ways, our life was great until it wasn't, right? I'm sure people can relate to this, but after 20 years, my marriage fell apart. And as a result, so did my whole world. Everything I'd planned for, hoped for, the way I saw myself. And I was completely crushed. I was truly a puddle on the floor. There were days that I questioned every choice and wondered if I would ever recover. But what's equally important to me to share is that while I never expected to go through divorce, I also never expected to have the life that I've built since. The pictures that I put here, other than the one with my mom and my sister, and my mom was a single mom raising her 2 kids, and I like to honor that. And I bet you can guess which picture that is, with the awesome 70s dresses and haircuts. But other than that one picture, these pictures are of my new life with my blended family and my divorced dog and my amazing young adult kids. After my divorce, I pivoted to become a divorce coach and a mediator because I saw over and over what this process does to smart, capable people. And after unofficially helping many of my friends through it, one of my dearest, most accomplished friends said to me, "I don't know how people do this without you." And I realized that this is what I am supposed to be doing. That was my light bulb moment. And I truly love helping people find their confidence again and their strength as they go through this process. Before becoming a coach, I spent 25 years in crisis communications, branding, marketing, work that taught me how people make decisions under pressure and how the right guidance can completely shift outcomes. When I rebuilt my own life, I saw firsthand that those same tools could help others move through divorce with greater strength and self-trust and intention. So, does any of this sound familiar as you're in this process? Small decisions feel heavier than they should. You're replaying conversations and second guessing yourself. You're normally capable and focused, but you're completely unsteady at the moment. And trying to hold it together for your kids is just taking everything you have. If you're nodding along, I hope you will really hear me say this. This is a common and normal response to an uncommon amount of stress. Everything we're going to talk about rests on a simple idea. And once you see it, I hope that what you'll find is that what you've been experiencing during divorce will make more sense. And that idea is this. What if steadiness, not willpower, leads to better decisions during divorce? The good news about that is you can learn steadiness. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So if you are in the early or middle stages of divorce, if you already have legal and or therapeutic support, or if you don't, if you want to make decisions that you can live with now and later, and if you care deeply about protecting your kids and your future peace, you are definitely in the right place. And if you're anything like me, you like to know sort of what's in front of you here. So let me tell you what we'll cover. I'm going to give you 5 specific tools to help you get through very common situations in divorce. Then I'll share a bit about working with me if you're interested. And finally, I will answer any questions that you have. So this first tip is about decision making. Obviously, something we have to do a lot of during divorce when we are not feeling at our best. Many people try to decide their way into calm, right? And remember how we talked about that this process unsettles people who are normally high functioning and clear headed. This is exactly what I'm talking about here. When your body is under sustained stress, it usually doesn't work to simply decide to be calm. The reason that's so hard is because this isn't a mindset problem. It's physiology, right? Your body is simply reacting. And a way to handle that is to focus instead on getting steady enough to decide, not trying to push yourself to get calmer. What do I mean when I say it's physiological? Well, when your nervous system is overloaded, it just prioritizes safety over nuance. And that's one of the reasons why everything feels so urgent. One of the things I want to normalize here is that, as I've said, many of the people who struggle the hardest with this are those who are usually decisive, capable, and action-oriented. So if this is you, when your regulation is off, you might often double down on thinking because that's what's always worked for you in the past. And it's one of the reasons why this feels so counterintuitive, right? But truly, there is nothing wrong with you. This is physiology. So before deciding, what if you asked yourself, am I steady enough to decide this right now? Is this decision based in love? And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail here. You might hear this and think it sounds like avoiding decisions, but it isn't. This is about timing them, not pushing them off. You're not kicking the can down the road and hoping for the best. You're being strategic about maximizing the positive impact of the decision that you'll make and the process that it takes to get there. So the first question is, am I steady enough to decide this right now? And that's a practical question. The second question adds an important layer. Is this decision based in love? Or it could be based in fear or pressure or urgency, or maybe even spite or anger. And by love, I don't mean perfection or self-sacrifice. I mean decisions that are rooted in care for yourself, your kids, and your long-term peace, not decisions driven by panic or the need to make discomfort stop or to hurt somebody else, because ultimately that hurts you too. One of the hardest parts about these questions, obviously there's pausing to ask them in the first place, and then it's answering them honestly. It's really hard to wait, that pause and narrow the decision. Those are hard things to do. So a helpful way to handle that is to ask yourself what really has to be done right now. Can you buy yourself time with a response like, I'll think about this and get back to you? Or can you break a big decision into parts? Is there a piece that needs to be addressed today? And can you respond just to that part so that it's not completely unmanageable, just this big, overwhelming issue you have to deal with? And that's not avoidance. That's using regulation as a strategy to make good decisions. I'll give you a real life example here, as I will with each of these tips, but I am currently working with a woman whose husband is really pressuring her to tell him what she wants to do with the house. Does she want to stay or sell? She's weighing her options, but she feels so much pressure to have an answer for him because he's frustrated. And that pressure is raising her anxiety. When we stepped back, the key question became, does she actually have to decide this right now? And the answer was no. This decision is part of their settlement. It doesn't have to be an immediate decision. The urgency was coming from his anxiety and from their long-standing patterns in their relationship, which I know we can all appreciate. You've been with someone a long time and you've learned how to accommodate, right? And you've learned where their triggers are often. So she knows he's feeling anxious and it's rubbing off essentially on her. But recognizing that she didn't have to answer on his timeline, especially when she's already depleted and worried, was a huge shift for her. Giving herself permission to pause made the difference. Nothing changed in this except the timing. Here's the second tip. This is about the hidden cost of staying dysregulated. I really like to take a second and let this one sink in because it is really significant. We tend to think that not doing anything is neutral, that staying overwhelmed is just how things are right now. And that's just the way it's going to be. And it's okay to feel like that. But in reality, that state is likely influencing what's happening in ways that you might not even realize. When people hear cost, you might just automatically think money, right? But one of the biggest costs that I see is confidence erosion. This slow loss of trust in your own judgment. When every decision feels heavy or second-guessed, people start deferring, avoiding, over-checking, and worse, it shapes decisions, communications, and outcomes. Here are just a few of the ways that dysregulation isn't neutral. When emotions are running high, your attorney may have to help you spend time getting re-regulated just so you can hear and act on their advice. Cases can drag on longer than necessary because emotional reactivity fuels escalation. Internal narratives like, I must win, or I might as well just give up, start driving decisions. And in negotiations, those stories can become self-fulfilling. And many people avoid bothering their attorney, which leads to sleepless nights and decisions made in isolation rather than with support. And these are just a few of the examples, but obviously those really add up. So try this cost checking before you react. If I stay in this state, what is it likely to cost me? You can evaluate that emotionally, financially, relationally. And the question alone is enough to slow escalation so that you have a choice. And that pause truly is where steadiness starts to return. I'm going to share a quote that I love by Viktor Frankl, who I'm sure many of you know. He's a Holocaust survivor and an author. And his famous quote that you may have heard also is, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And I love that because I think it really reminds us what we can control, and having the awareness to control that pause is a game changer. A really common example is email. You see a message come in about your divorce from your ex or from your attorney or another professional, and your body starts immediately reacting. Maybe your heart is racing, palms start sweating, you're agitated. If that's happening to you even once a day, it's worth asking, what is this costing me? One tip I give all my clients is to read and respond to divorce-related texts once or twice a day at designated times. And if that's hard, if you see the notification and can't resist, set up a separate email account for divorce communications and turn off the notifications. When people make this shift, I see real differences. More regulation, better sleep, fewer reactive responses, and less attorney time needed to spend on cleaning things up. This next tip is about the space that is so often missed between therapy and legal advice. So I want to just say right out of the gate here, though, that therapy and legal advice play critical roles in divorce. I certainly am not suggesting to replace them. Therapy helps you identify patterns, review your history. You may need a clinical diagnosis. You may need medication. Those things absolutely are done through therapy. Very important. Also, legal advice helps you understand the dissolution process, clarify options, and determine strategy. You need both. But many of the defining moments of divorce don't happen in an office or in a session. They happen at home, late at night, or in an email exchange, or at drop-off, when emotions are high and something still needs to be decided. So much of divorce stress lives in this everyday place. Of course, divorce stress also comes along with the big court dates and major decisions. But the bulk of it is in the waiting, the uncertainty, the back and forth communication, and the constant question of, is this normal or am I doing something wrong? And I will tell you that this is probably the question I get asked more than any other. Is this, whatever it is that I'm experiencing, the overwhelm, the sadness, the hard ability to process, the brain fog, is it normal? Everybody feels so isolated during divorce and wonders that same thing. So I feel like it's so important to let you know that you're not alone and these feelings are absolutely normal. Many people that I work with already have support. They have attorneys, many have therapists. But the challenge is that that support isn't designed for this in-between space. The moments when emotions are really high and decisions still need to be made. And when that space isn't supported, dysregulation doesn't just feel bad, it can cost you as well. Now, none of this means you're doing divorce wrong. It means you're navigating a process that requires steadiness, but you've never been told that, and you probably haven't been taught how to do it. And I also want to address a common misperception that you only need this kind of support if your divorce is high conflict. In reality, most divorces are not high conflict, War of the Roses dramas, thankfully. Most people are good people just truly trying to get through this, doing their best to take care of themselves and their kids and reduce the impact on everyone. Most of the people who benefit from this kind of work are in low or medium conflict situations, but those all still involve a heavy emotional load, and they're, of course, worried about how it's impacting their kids. Support here isn't only about divorces that are a 10 on the scale. It's about improving the process for everyone, including how you handle it so you can extend that to your kids. One way to do that is to figure out the moment that you really are in. If you're looking for the wrong kind of support, and wrong is strong, it just might not be exactly appropriate for where you are, it's normal to feel frustrated or misunderstood, and then you end up staying stuck there. And then you might assume that the failure is with the support or with you. For example, you may try to get legal clarity when what you really need is help regulating, or help trying to process emotions when what you really need is help deciding. And I see this one a lot, trying to power through alone when what you really need is support in real time. Once you know the moment you're in, you can choose support that actually helps instead of feeling frustrated that something isn't working. And it's really hard to push against that societal pressure to just be tougher and do things alone. It's definitely out there. And it's one of the things that I think is a real challenge as you navigate divorce. Here's a common example for this. A client feels overwhelmed and stuck, so they bring that feeling into a meeting with their attorney and ask what they should be doing. And the attorney gives solid options. But because the client is so dysregulated, they can't really hear and act on the advice. And often, I see this all the time too, the question they ask is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what's really on their mind, or they didn't know exactly how to articulate what's really worrying them. And they leave feeling more confused, not less. The problem wasn't the advice. Certainly, the attorney gave good advice. The problem was that neither the client nor the attorney was getting to the real issue. And that cycle can continue, which is one of the reasons it can be so valuable for you to recognize for yourself when you're dysregulated, if possible, to save yourself that kind of frustration. So far we've talked about steadiness, cost, and support. Communication is where all of that shows up in real life, especially during divorce. This tip focuses on how small shifts before you communicate can really impact what happens next. So I love this expression, you can't out-communicate a dysregulated internal state. It's easy to assume that communication problems are word problems. You can spend hours drafting, redrafting, or rehearsing what to say, thinking the right wording will fix the situation. And don't get me wrong, I love words. As I said, I'm a communications person, and they absolutely do matter. But when your internal state is way dysregulated, even the right words can escalate things. And that's because it's not just about the words, and it's also about the moment you choose to engage. So just as important, though, is choosing whether or not to engage. Maybe walking away is the very best thing you can do. Sometimes that disconnection is the best thing for you. As I said, I am a communications person, and I truly believe that some of our greatest power in divorce lies right here in this area of how we choose to respond and interact as we transition through this relationship with our ex. Communication is free, it's powerful, and it's completely in your control. What do I mean by that? Well, your ex can never make you pick up the phone or respond to a text or an email. You get to choose. Embrace that power. If you want to avoid replaying conversations later thinking, I wish I had said that differently, the best gift you can give yourself is a pause. And the other is clarifying what you want from the exchange before responding. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more detail. So while steadiness doesn't guarantee a good outcome, it definitely improves your odds. So why do conversations go sideways? There are all kinds of reasons, right? It doesn't always start with what's said. How and when something is said or the motivation behind it is often another reason why conversations go wrong. If you're feeling rushed or anxious or desperate for resolution, that urgency often leaks into the exchange, even when your words are careful. And if urgency takes over or anger, conversations really tend to spiral. So before you communicate, here are 3 things that you can use to check it. This is a simple filter, but it's powerful. The first, am I regulated enough? You don't have to be perfectly calm, just steady enough not to react. I like to think about things this way too. And I like to do this for a lot of big conversations. If it went exactly the way I wanted, what would that look like? If I walked away and I said, that was a home run, what do I mean? What pieces were part of it, of that conversation to make it successful? What, if, for example, is my goal to have a civil conversation? Is my goal to get the result that I want? Is it to not respond or react to something that I'm baited on, right? Thinking about that ahead of time will absolutely help you get there. The next question is now the right time? A message sent at the wrong time can undo even very good intentions. And third, what is my true intention? Are you trying to inform, decide, set a boundary, get reassurance? Or are you just wanting to strike back, cause discomfort, or maybe let the other person, what they're up to, or tell them what you're up to? And I'm not saying you'll never do any of this, but it is important to know what you want out of a conversation. If you really want a schedule change, but what you say is full of F-bombs and sarcasm, you're probably not going to get what you want. So my recommendation is to slow down enough to answer these questions. And this is so you get what you want. A lot of people will ask me, well, I don't think my ex deserves me taking the high road or being so thoughtful and intentional. And I hear you, and you don't have to do anything for your ex. I'm giving you these tips because I know that they help you. They help you feel better as you navigate this process. If that rubs off on your ex, maybe that's a bonus. If it helps your kids, it's definitely a bonus. Here's an example for this one. A client is frustrated about a scheduling issue and starts drafting a message in the middle of the night. This client, who I love, calls this her 3:17 a.m. brain. I think we all know exactly what she means by that, right? She's tired, annoyed, and feels pressure to resolve this right now. But before sending it, she pauses, realizes that it's late, and decides not to send it. She knows she's not regulated enough, and it's not the right time. And the real goal is not to create an argument. So she waits until the next day, reads it with fresh eyes, and a little bit of sleep, and sends a shorter message that focuses only on what she's looking for without the editorial. Same issue, different context, very different outcome. This fifth one is about protecting your kids without burning out. This is such a big one, and it's so loaded, right? Many parents worry all the time. What if my ex is wooing the kids with trips and gifts and unlimited screen time and junk food? What if I say no, or pack the wrong lunch, or hold a boundary and they just say they don't want to be with me? We put so much pressure on ourselves as parents, and I know this, I did this too. But what kids need most isn't perfection or constant accommodation. They need consistency, safety, and knowing that at least one adult is steady and available. This is really hard, right? Because I know I don't have to tell you that, but because we often absorb everybody else's stress as parents, put ourselves last, make decisions from exhaustion, and then we get burned out, right? And divorce amplifies all of that. But when exhaustion is driving decisions, even good intentions can backfire, right? Burnout just removes the buffer. Everything hits harder. So here's a question that protects both you and your kids. What supports steadiness for me and safety for my kids right now? Even, and this one is so important, when your soon-to-be ex or your ex is not doing the same thing. And there are going to be a lot of times when they're not. You can only be the best parent that you can be. Unfortunately, you cannot regulate for two people. And a burned out parent, no matter how loving and well-intended, often doesn't have the capacity that we want or that our kids need. So I think it's really important to say here that choosing steadiness is hard and brave. It is not the easier choice, right? This is the harder road. But it also means choosing a way of parenting that you can sustain, not just for this week or even for this month, but hopefully for the duration of this really challenging process. Kids truly don't need perfect decisions. They need at least one adult who isn't running on empty. The example I have for this is a client who has two very young kids. They're both under 10. And she was feeling so bad about everything divorce related that she was saying yes to everything to avoid upsetting her kids. And as a result, she was just completely depleted. We reframed best possible parenting. That was the work that we really spent some time on, and looked at it as sustainable steadiness instead, not constant accommodation. She was able to put in some clearer boundaries. And as a result, while it didn't happen overnight, she definitely started to build more capacity, and the kids adjusted so much better than she expected. I think we've all heard that, kids like some boundaries and some rules and regulation to know what they expect. They're not going to admit that they like that, but we know that they do. Obviously, a lot of these things are, different depending on kids' ages, of course, but the general fundamental principle stays the same. So after hearing those examples, is there an area that feels most familiar or challenging for you? Deciding, regulating, communicating, I don't know, all the above. I know I struggled with all of them at one point or another. I hope as you're hearing that you can also imagine that decisions can feel clearer. Communication doesn't always have to spiral. You can parent with less depletion, and there is support out there that matches the moment that you're in. And while awareness is a great starting point, I also want to remind you that practice is what really makes the difference. As you know, and we've talked about, most of the moments that matter in divorce don't happen when you're calm and reflective. They happen when you're tired and triggered and under pressure. And that's where the practice comes in, because steadiness is something that you can build so you can rely on it versus something that you just recognize. So if you're game, I would love for you just to close your eyes for a minute and picture the next couple months. I know it seems a little bit cheesy, but I promise it's very short. I would love for you to just imagine a couple months from now that not everything is completely resolved, but you are steadier. You're less reactive. You pause before responding. You trust your decisions more, even when they're really hard. Communication feels more intentional. Parenting feels more sustainable. And maybe even for the first time in a while, you notice a small but real sense of confidence. Not because divorce is any easier, but because you're able to handle it differently. Okay, if you were game for the eyes closed, you can open them up. I hope that planted a little seed of possibility with you. And that you realize you could learn that steadiness doesn't have to be forced. It is there for the learning with the right kind of support. And if you're noticing that knowing this and doing this might be two different things, that is truly where support can make a difference and where I would invite you to continue doing this work with me. I have created something that I'm launching for the first time. It's a program called the Better Than Before Divorce Coping and Growth Toolkit. And I created this specifically for the things that we've been talking about, that space between therapy and legal meetings in those everyday moments. I also want to say I designed this in particular to be financially accessible. If I could gift everyone the gift of a private coach during divorce, I absolutely would do it. I hope this is the next best thing. It's many of the same tools that I share with my private clients every day. I teach you how to steady your emotions so you can make clear, confident decisions. And it's important to share that this is not a how to get divorced program, right? This is about coping and growth for people who are in the thick of that divorce stress. You're here because this process has unsettled you, even though you are strong and competent. And that is a completely normal reaction to an abnormal amount of stress. You may be here because you're trying to minimize the impact of this on your kids and yourself. Or maybe you're here because you're frustrated by the reality that trying to control something or someone isn't working. You want to do the best you can during this process, but it's so overwhelming. I created the Coping and Growth Toolkit to help with these exact situations. And I do want you to know that I have been exactly where you are. I didn't get steadier because I'm different. I learned the specific skills, and now I love sharing them. This work is built to help capable people find their footing again. I truly understand the grief, pain, overwhelm, sadness. But the piece that I also bring that I think is really so valuable is that I remind you that there's a future out there for you. You don't have to see it right now. You probably don't. You don't need to know how to build the skills, just that you want to. My hope is that by engaging with this, you can skip some of the missteps that I took, that many other people take during this process. Obviously, having support doesn't eliminate hard moments. I hope that goes without saying, but it absolutely does reduce how many times you have to repeat them and hopefully shortens the learning curve. So what's in the program? There are 4 self-paced modules with bite-sized lessons because I know there's only so much capacity you have, right? These are 5 to 15-minute videos. And communication scripts, boundary templates that you can use immediately, coping tools and emotional regulation practices, videos, PDFs, so you can personalize everything, a private community for connection and support from others who've been there as well, co-parenting and conflict navigation guides, and lifetime access because things come up, right? They just, especially if you have kids, you will likely be dealing with some co-parenting things and they grow up, the issues change. So it's nice to be able to come back and figure out if there's something you need to revisit or learn. I structured the support in these 4 steps to get you from overwhelmed to grounded to confident. So we start with stabilize, which is to get your footing, quiet the emotional chaos, and build the foundation that we'll use through the rest of the program. Next is strategize. We're going to shift your thinking, understand what your triggers are, get clear on what matters most for you and your kids. In strengthen, we build steady communication skills, boundaries that stick, and tools that help you navigate really tough moments with confidence. And then finally, it's really important to have this 4th one, which is sustain, right? Create some momentum, be able to handle these new challenges more comfortably, keep growing into that better than before self, which is something I get to remind you to do all the time. So there are 2 ways to participate depending on the kind of support that you want. And people engage with this work differently. Some want a clearer framework they can apply on their own, more DIY, if you will. Others want support while they're actively making decisions. Because sometimes that doing it under pressure and knowing what to do are 2 different things. So the 2 ways to participate are these. The first is the core program. This includes, as I said, lifetime access to everything in that Coping and Growth Toolkit. Community support, you're part of that online community for a year, and some personalized support through Voxer, which is awesome. The second option is signature support. This is designed for people who want a little bit more of the one-on-one connection and some hand-holding during some of those tougher times. It includes everything in core and an initial one-on-one session with me and weekly live group coaching calls, including a replay, ongoing guidance as situations unfold. And this group is going to be capped at 10. So I do expect that this will fill up. And if this is something that you want, please do either we'll talk about how to do it today or let me know, because I think this will fill quickly since it is limited in size. And if you do want to sign up today for either program, I'm going to also give you this PDF, which is so awesome. It is a bonus that I created with a family law attorney to help you use your lawyer's time really well and reduce unnecessary stress and avoidable legal fees. So if you've ever been in that position where you feel like, I don't want to bother my attorney, I'm not sure what to bring up or how, I feel embarrassed asking questions, this is a really great tool that you'll have. So everything you get is here: the Better Than Before Divorce Coping and Growth Toolkit, the bonus De-Escalate When You're Triggered, and the second one if you wanted to sign up today. So I'm sure you're wondering what it costs. Let's go there next. I've done my very best to make this as affordable as possible. I designed both these options to be accessible because I truly believe that emotional support during divorce is an extra. It's not something you earn once things are bad enough. Emotional support during divorce should be as normal as getting legal guidance. For many people, the core program is probably less than 2 hours of your attorney's time and will hopefully save you a great deal in avoidable reactivity, confusion, and cleanup later. And that goes for the signature one as well. There definitely isn't a right or wrong here. It's just about choosing the level of support that you feel fits wherever you are right now. And if it helps to spread things out, I have made sure that Klarna and Afterpay installment plans are both available as options. So how should you choose? As I mentioned, core is if you want structure without the live calls, you prefer to process and sort of operate on your own, and you like having those tools at the ready. Signature is a better fit if you are wanting more of the one-on-one support and you know you'll benefit from that while you are navigating this on the, in the day-to-day, in the moment. And both programs are a good fit for you if you're open to learning new tools, you want things to feel easier, and you're right now overwhelmed by the emotional roller coaster and you want things to feel steadier. You'll definitely benefit if you are tired of reacting. You want to respond with clarity, with less regret, and looking for tools that work in real life right now, not just scattered internet advice. I think it's also important to say that it might not be the right fit for you if you're not open to trying new tools or perspectives, or you're looking for someone to fix your co-parent or change them. And I am not a lawyer, so it's important to say if you're looking for legal advice, this work is focused on your emotional well-being. If it feels like a fit, choose based on the level of support that you want. That's really the best way to make the decision. Here is the website. You can go there and choose which plan works. And here's how it will work when you enroll. You'll click this initial purchase button. It will take you to where you choose core or signature. You'll complete your checkout and go to a confirmation page, and then you will get a confirmation email with login details and the rest of the information. And for those of you who are interested in the signature program, our first call is Wednesday, February 25th at noon Mountain Time. So you can put that on the calendar as well. But of course, all that information will be sent to you. If you're wondering how to evaluate if it's right for you, I here are a couple things that people ask a lot, right? In practical terms, how does this work? If all of this program did was help you reduce the impact of this process on your kids, would that be worth it? If all it did was help you save time with your attorney, I think it would probably pay for itself. And I do want you to know that what really matters to me at the end of the day is that you are getting support that's valuable to you. So I built in a guarantee because you can try it. Start going through the first step. If you're in Signature, complete those step 1 lessons and join a call within 14 days. And if it doesn't work, you let me know, because I will give you a full refund. I want people here who are eager to learn and want to be part of the program. I'm not trying to push people into anything. So if it doesn't feel right for you, I completely respect that. I thought I would share a couple of testimonials from clients who've been where you are as well, because I know how isolating this feels. It doesn't seem like anyone could possibly understand where you are. This client navigating a messy divorce with 2 young kids and a co-parent who was having the kids call and beg him not to leave. You can imagine the emotional overwhelm and internal conflict of that. And this one is relatable to so many people. She was so shocked and overwhelmed. She literally had no idea where to start. And how would she? Like so many of you, she was navigating this for the first time, and she was completely stressed and depleted. And I want to add, for anybody who chose the divorce, that is absolutely understandable as well. And it doesn't mean that you're not doing something just as hard. There's a lot on your plate too. You are struggling with many of those same issues of grief and overwhelm and stress. Sometimes just having someone to help you find a new perspective and give you a little vote and taste of optimism can make all the difference. So again, here is the website and all the things that are included in the program. And as we move into Q&A, which we're about to do, I hope that what you will think about is that if all we did today, or all this program did, was remind you of your strengths and help you re-engage your confidence and know that an amazing future is out there for you, that I hope that that was worth your time and effort. I am going to have Taryn, who's my tech support, add the link to the download of the de-escalation guide here in the chat so that you guys can download that for free. And we're going to move into the Q&A. And I'd be so happy to answer any questions that you have. There's the link, as you can see in the chat, to download that guide. So I hope you will all do that. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have about the program or about your own situation or questions and how you might manage something. And if you would rather send me a private chat, I meant to say this in the beginning, you're welcome to do that too, if you, for whatever reason, you didn't want to put it in the main chat. So sometimes people ask, I got asked this question this morning. I don't always want to be the adult, right? Why do I always have to be the adult and do all the things? I sign up for the programs, right? I do all the work, and the other person just goes off and, lives their best life. And I completely get that. It is so maddening when you are the only adult in the room and you think there should be two. It is one of the most frustrating things of this process, right? And I will tell you that the only response I have to that, the best thing I have, is that it's time for you now to decide that you are going to be the person that you want to be, that reflects your values and your skills and the things that are important to you, regardless of whatever it is that they choose to do. And that you're not doing any of these things, this work, this effort for anybody else. You're doing it for yourself because you want to look back on this time and say that you did your best. You want to know that you were there for your kids in the best possible way. And I think that when we shift our thinking to know that all this hard work is not for somebody else, it's to be the best version of ourselves and to move into the life that we deserve and that we want, then it's worth it. And I know it's a mind shift to do that. It can be really hard. So I really respect that question and I understand it. Dealing with a high conflict parent can be very, very, very challenging. So there's a question, how can I go into a lawyer's office for my first meeting prepared? Yeah, this is a great question. I'd prefer to have sole custody. Okay, and he refuses to pay for anything. Lovely. First, I'm sorry you're dealing with that. That is really tough. So this is a really important question. I'm so glad you asked this. How can I go into a lawyer's office for my first meeting prepared and not blindsided? The first thing is to decide what kind of a lawyer you are looking for. It sounds like this is going to be a little more high conflict, if I'm correct, based on what you're sharing here, if there's going to be a custody fight. So you may want to get really clear about who you're talking to. And I don't know if you've already gone through that process, but it's not easy always to find the right attorney. And I highly recommend interviewing people. It's not that one or another is not competent. Generally, the people you're going to be speaking to are competent. It's a matter of fit, almost like a therapist sometimes. Who do you feel like has your back and is going to be the best advocate for you and your kids? Now, in this case, if you're going to end up going to court for sole custody, then you want somebody who's familiar with those kinds of issues and going to court. And I would ask that question. Have you done these kinds of cases before? What do you like to do? Sometimes they will tell you what kind of cases they prefer. So some attorneys really love the, going to court route, and some stay far away from it, right? There's a whole collaborative area. And some attorneys, that's all they want to do now. They want to do alternative dispute resolution. The other thing I will tell you is that it's very unusual, and I'm speaking for Colorado here, and I'm not sure where you are, but in Colorado, it's not a given that someone would get sole custody. That's a fight. And so it depends on the state for sure. But if you are worried that is going to be a battle and that he's not going to be okay with it, I definitely would go into a lawyer's office with clarity around what your priorities are. And that goes for anyone. When you go to meet an attorney, clarifying what it is that you would like to get out of this. I don't want to go to court. I hear where I see the biggest issues that we might be having, or whatever it is. Thinking about that in advance so that you can give them as much information as possible and they can really respond and let you know if it's a good fit is a great way to go. One other piece about this that I'll say is that some attorneys do charge a consult fee. You can see only attorneys that don't. That's an option too. One of the things that I help clients with a lot is building their team. And by the way, I do that for free, and because I think it's really just important that people find the right people. So I don't know where you are, T, but if you are in Colorado and you want to shoot me a message, I am happy to give you a couple recommendations, at least of starting places. You can always take them or leave them, but that's something that I feel like I just share because it's important. And I really do think people need to find the right team to help them get the results that they want. It can make a huge difference. That was a long answer. I hope it was helpful. It was really awesome of you. Thank you for sharing your time with me. I hope that you found value, that you got some tips that you can use right away to help you navigate this process. And if it feels right, or you have questions about working together, please reach out. And if it feels right, I would love to continue that and work with you. Have a great day, everybody.